easy to see. And I've got some needles here. The tricky thing about, the only tricky thing about those techniques is actually putting the thread through the needle, okay? My tip here, there are two tips, okay? First of all, quite often, when you've got a thread, the end might be frailing a bit, which makes it very difficult to pass it through the eye of the needle, putting it in the right place or not. The other thing that you can do is you can lick your fingers and put a tiny bit of saliva on the end of the needle. I'm not doing it because I'm ill, so I don't want to pass any germs, because that will also make it easier to pass it through. Okay, I will try to do it again to the camera, and then I will do it closer to you. Okay. Okay, easy? Do I need to do it closer towards you? Okay, we've got now a needle on the thread. Okay, I'm going to get a decent amount of my thread here. Okay, how to close it? Just a general simple knot. So it's a loop, and you put the ends through the loop. Okay, and I've got a knot here. Now that will work on fabric. It will not work on the paper because it's a different surface. So that means if I want this thread to stay and actually work with the thread, I will need to do exactly the same loop to make a knot over and over a few times. So it's thicker. Any questions about that? No, easy peasy. Okay, so what can we do and what could be useful for us if we're working with the surfaces? Well, quite often we're going to use our thread because we want to join two things together, okay? So for that, a simple loop thread, it's pretty handy. So you just go over and over. It's almost like a spring. Nothing difficult with that, yeah? Mm-hmm. Okay. Moving on, there is a thread that if you were sewing, it's actually used for gathering things to make like those, like do sheets. Okay, and that is just going one way or another. So you just go up and down. Vertically, yeah. Because if that was a fabric, then I can pull it and I can gather the fabric. On the paper, I might use it to actually just use it as a decoration. Okay? The one that's very handy and allows you to create continuous line, it's a basic stitch, and it goes like that. Okay. So, you go through, okay? And you go, so you start the same as with going up and down, but for the next stitch, instead of going forward, you go back. Okay, make sense? So then you go to the front, and then you go back. Okay. This stitch is much more stable. It also allows you to create a line that is continuous. Okay? Okay. Of course, you can use variations of those stitches to create something a bit more interesting, right? So again, I'm putting...
If the thread is a little bit older, you can do flowers.
Say it again?
The flowers that
Exactly. Okay, so let me now show you some variations of what I was doing here. Okay, so we've got a loop. Okay, we can make it more interesting. Yep, sorry. Too short. I'll just use a single thread. We can make loop more interesting by, when we've got a loop, by going back with the needle over the loop. Okay? At the moment it doesn't look like anything, but when we start continuing with that, it moves the thread so it looks really nice and it's on the end. Does that make sense? It does. That's why I'm showing it to you. Okay. So that stitch is actually used in Japanese books. Okay. And also it's used, or it used to be used when people used to do things like that by hand, to decorate ends of like sleeves and hems. Okay. And it creates pretty nice effect. Okay. Oh, made a mistake. So what to do, and I made a mistake. I just release my thread. I'm just going to unpick that part. And now that I'm back to the place that looks okay, I can thread it back onto my needle and correct my mistake. And I can continue. It would be so much easier if I took a smaller piece of paper. Okay, easy? Okay. So the update on the basic stitch here. Okay. What you could do is you can use that to you don't have to use it in the straight line. You can actually start using it as a curve. You can also start using it to continuously on an angle to create a design. Yeah, so I'm still doing the same up and down, but visually it looks very different, right? Mm-hmm. And if I start putting those threads close next to one another, I can actually start building the surface where I'm changing the color with my thread. Okay? Yeah, so for example, like I can change something and make it in the color of the thread. Okay? I could come back on that and do it actually as a cross if I want more coverage. So for example here, I could be like, okay, and I'm going to start working the other direction and just change my angle.
The cross is good when you want to do a leaf pattern as well.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so I can create more coverage. I'm making a big holes here just so it's easier for you to see what I'm doing, yeah? I could do it much tighter, especially on the fabric. Okay. What else I could do if I'm working on the paper and let's say I know that I want to do a specific design, I can help myself by drawing this design. And let's say if I want it to be very organized, instead of guessing what I'm doing, I could perforate my paper first. Okay. That will allow me then, so I've got my own guide of where exactly to put the thread. Okay, so if I want it to be very perfect. right? Easy peasy. Okay. And yeah, I think that's enough. For very, very, very basic. Where is the just basic, yeah? Okay. So your task is going to do it twice. So I want you to do the basic approach and then try to make it a bit more complicated for yourself. But to challenge yourself, I would like you to do it on the paper and also on a scrap of fabric. Why? Why would I ask you to do it twice?
Because there's a difference between paper and fabric.
Exactly. That's going to behave very differently. Also, it's stretchy, it's bendy. So yeah, cut a tiny bit of it, put it together and start sewing. My advice would be maybe a smaller piece of paper that was very hard to hold in the hands. Thank you.